morning, students. Today, moving to the second part of the chapter, we had been studying the 100 dresses. Now it's part 2. Straight away, moving to the explanation, the 100 dresses part 2. While the class was circling the room, the monitor from the principal's office brought Miss Mason a note. When the whole class was gathering into the room, the monitor brought a note for the class teacher, Miss Mason. Miss Mason read it several times and studied it thoughtfully for a while. Then she clapped her hands. "Attention, class, everyone back to their seat," she said. When the shuffling of feet had stopped and the room was still and quiet, Miss Mason said, "I have a letter from Vanda's father that I want to read to you." Miss Mason stood there a moment, and the silence in the room grew tense and expectant. The teacher adjusted her glasses slowly and deliberately, knowingly. Her manner indicated that what was coming. This letter from Vanda's father was a matter of great importance. The way she presented it showed something important it is. Everybody listened closely as Miss Mason read the small note. Now, what Vanda's father has written: "Dear teacher, my Vanda will not come to your school anymore. Jake also. Maybe Vanda's brother Jake also comes to the same school. Now we move away to big city. No more holler Pollock. No more ask why funny name. Plenty of funny names in the big city. Yours truly, Jan Petrowski." So this brief note he had written. They are moving to another city. No more holler Pollock. No more holler Pollock means holler means crying, and Pollock means suggesting anger, showing anger. Some meaningless word showing anger. It is holler Pollock means it's enough now. There would be no more crying and no more shouting about the funny names, because there are many like us in the big city, so we are moving. A deep silence met the reading of this letter. When the letter was read in the class, everybody was silent. Miss Mason took off her glasses, blew on them, and wiped them on her soft white handkerchief. Then she put them on again and looked at the class. When she spoke, her voice was very low. "I am sure that none of the boys and girls in room 13 would purposely and deliberately hurt anyone's feeling because his or her name happened to be a long, unfamiliar one." He is saying to the class, "I am sure you might have not done this knowingly, deliberately not hurting feeling because of some funny name. I prefer to think that what was said in thoughtlessness. Whatever you might have said, I think you have just said it without thinking. I know that all of you feel the way I do. This is a very unfortunate thing to have happened, unfortunate and sad both, and I want you to think about it." The first period was a study period. Maddie tried to prepare her lesson, but she could not put her mind on her work. She had a very sick feeling in the bottom of her stomach. True, she had not enjoyed listening to Peggy ask Vanda how many dresses she had in her closet, but she had said nothing. It is true that she did not like whenever Peggy asked Vanda about her dresses, but that is also true that she said nothing about it. She had stood by silently without speaking anything. She just stood, and that was just as bad as what Peggy had done, even worse. If Peggy was doing wrong and not stopping, not speaking anything about it, was equally wrong. She was a coward. At least Peggy had not considered they were being mean, but she, Maddie, had thought they were doing wrong. She could have put herself in Vanda's shoes. At least when she knew, she thought about it, they were doing wrong. Even then, after being aware, she did not do anything. That was even more wrong about it. She could imagine herself in Vanda's position. Goodness, wasn't there anything she could do now? Is there anything she could do now? If only she could tell Vanda she had not meant to hurt her feelings. She wishes if she could tell Vanda she did not mean to hurt her feelings. She turned around and stole a glance, and Peggy looked at Peggy secretly. But Peggy did not look up. She seemed to be studying hard. Well, whether Peggy felt badly or not, she, Maddie, had to do something. She had to find Vanda Petrovsky. Maybe she had not yet moved away. Maybe Peggy would climb the heights, the Boggins Heights, go to that place with her, and they would tell Vanda she had won the contest, that they thought she was smart, and the 100 dresses were beautiful. She wishes that she could do all this. Then, when school was dismissed in the afternoon, Peggy said, with pretended casualness, means with carelessness, but pretending, hey, let's go and see if that kid has left town or not. So Peggy had the same idea. Maggie, when Maggie said this, okay, let's go and see that girl has left. Now Maddie thought, oh, that means she was also thinking same. Peg was really all right. The two girls hurried out of the building, up the street towards Boggins Heights, the part of town that wore such a forbidding, very bad air on this kind of a November afternoon. Drizzly, damp and dismal, means with rain coming, drizzly, damp and dismal, wet and sad. Well, at least, said Peggy, gruffly. Peggy said, just roughly, she said, well, I never did call her a foreigner to make fun of her name. I never thought she had the sense to know we were making fun of her anyway. I thought she was too dumb. And Key, look how she can draw. My God, how good she draws. Maddie could say nothing. All she hoped was that they would find Veta. She wanted to tell her that they were sorry that they had picked on her, they made fun of her, and how wonderful the whole school thought she was, and please not to move away and everybody would be nice. She and Peggy would fight anybody who was not nice. She thought. She was wishing she could do all this, to tell Vanda they were sorry, to tell that she was wonderful. Now the whole school is regretting, and nobody, everybody would be nice, and they would even fight for her if somebody was not nice with her. The two girls hurried on. They hoped to get to the top of hill before dark. I think that is where Petrovsky lived, said Maddie, pointing to a little white house. Wisps of old grass, means small pieces of old grass, stuck up here and there along the pathway like thin kittens, small kittens. The house and its sparse little yard, sparse also means little, yard looked shabby, dirty, shabby means dirty, but even clean. It reminded Maddie of Vanda's one dress, her faded blue cotton dress, shabby but clean. There was not a sign of life about the house. Around the house, nobody they could see. Peggy knocked firmly on the door, but there was no answer. She and Maddie went around to backyard and knocked there. Still there was no answer. There was no doubt about it. The Petrovskys were gone. How could they make amends now? How could they say sorry about it? They turned slowly and made their way back down the hill. Well, anyway, said Peggy, she has gone now, so what can we do? Besides, when I was asking her about all her dresses, she probably was getting good ideas for her drawings. She might not even have won the contest otherwise. Peggy says that it was not totally wrong of asking her about all the dresses. Maybe at that time she was getting more ideas. Otherwise, she could have not won the contest. Maddie turned this idea carefully over in her head. Means Maddie did not pay attention much towards this idea. For if there were anything in it, she would not have to feel so badly. If she felt that this thing, if this fact is correct, why she would feel so bad? But that night she could not get to sleep. She thought about Vanda and her faded blue dress and the little house she had lived in. And she thought of glowing picture those 100 dresses made, all lined up in the classroom. At last, Mary sat up in bed and pressed her forehead tight in her hands and really thought. This was the hardest thinking she had ever done. And after a long, long time, she reached an important conclusion. She made a decision after thinking for a long time. What? Okay, she was never going to stand by and say nothing again. Means whenever something happens, she would never stand quietly. If she ever heard anybody picking on someone, making fun of someone because they were funny looking or because they had strange names, she would speak up. She would speak against it. She had decided now. Even if meant losing Peggy's friendship, even then, if he loses friendship with Peggy, she would do it. She had no way of making things right with Venda. Now, the thing what had happened with Venda, she cannot do anything about it. But from now on, she would never make anybody else that unhappy again. She decided that night. So, with this, this part ends here. I had become continuing with the next part in the next video. That's all for now. Thank you.